So we'll talk some more about this. We have our guest joining us from Abuja studios, Mr. Paul James, the Elections Program Manager. But just before we introduce him, now, following that exercise, Yaga Africa is watching the vote and made several observations. Some of the slides you will see shortly. One was the inability of the BVAS to record the biometrics of 2011 registered voters. There was also the issue of relocation of voters. There was another issue, BVAS failing to verify some PVCs, fingerprints, facial biometrics. And that was not all. The relocation of voters were seen in some cases, some polling units in Kano. There was also another situation in Mashi Ward, that's the Mashi local government area in Katsina State. Also in Oredo local government area, Edo State and Obiakpo, it said that INEC had pegged the ratio of voter to polling units at 750, resulting in split polling units. And there was the issue of, perhaps not an issue, because they said 98% of the polling units, the BVAS, function properly. So let's talk to him. Mr. Paul James joins me now. Thank you and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. I want to ask, and this is if you felt that your expectations were met, and this is with regards to the mock exercise conducted by INEC over the weekend.
Thank you, Millicent. I think for all intent and purpose, the exercise served what it was intended to, that is to test the technology that will be deployed for the 2023 election. From what we saw INEC did, I am just worried. I don't know whether INEC cherry-picked some of those locations and also the equipment that INEC will use, because we saw the intentionality to use the device to do an end-to-end engagement from the accreditation of voters to the upload of, if you like, a sample election results to the INEC election results viewing portal. What we saw was that there were 35% of locations where INEC had even more than one device, which provided the opportunity to even test as many of the devices as possible. But then we saw also the processing time for the device in 74% of locations. It took between 1 to 2 minutes to process a voter. In 24% of locations, between 3 to 5 minutes, and then in 1% of locations, it took 6 minutes or more to process a voter. But again, like you had also mentioned, the exercise also exposed some of the underlying concerns we have about the process, because we got locations where voters arrived and they were told, oh, they have been migrated to other polling units. What INEC simply did was, for any location that have more than 750 voters, they split the polling unit into two, and then that was even done in alphabetical order, and simply just move voters to a new location. Most of these voters turned out but did not even know where to engage the process. We had also had instances in Obiakpo in Rivers State where before the exercise commenced, there were locations where the device that was supplied were actually for the wrong polling unit. But we saw swift action on the part of INEC that within the space of 10 minutes, they were able to replace the device and also bring the device that is intended for that location. But then again, like you had also mentioned, the concerns about oversized polling units is still a threat that INEC need to address. From the current list of polling units that INEC had released, there is still a location, for instance, in Kogise that has over 11,000 registered voters. There are locations also that we have seen with 8,000 or more, locations with 6,000 or more registered voters, which I thought to some extent also defeat the essence of the polling unit reclassification that INEC had done, which was supposed to decongest voters to polling units. So we hope that all of this that we have seen from the current exercise, that INEC will be able to address them in record time before the election day.
So another question with all of this is, this wasn't the regular, crowd that one would expect for the general election. So there might be more people. So could there be more of these issues? If you were to rate INEC's level of success, which they have said to them is really top of the bar, how would you rate that in preparation for the general elections forthcoming?
Well, I think for the technology deployment itself, to some extent, we were satisfied with the conduct. But one of the fallout we saw from the exercise is also communication on the part of INEC. to some extent, turnout was poor in location where ordinarily you expect to see more voters come out to engage in the process. Others are attributed those to the current realities that people are confronted with. That is the challenge of not accessing monies from the bank. The challenge of petrol scarcity could have limited them traveling to those polling units to engage in the process. But even with that, we thought communication about this was very poor and thought INEC need to improve on that as we plan for the major election. Another concern to raise is also the security threats across the country. I am not convinced as we speak that INEC is able to conduct election in all of the 176,846 polling units. INEC needs to be upfront with its communication. Where it has challenges, we need to begin to see action on the actionable plans or actions on the part of agencies concerned in a way that will inspire confidence and encourage citizens to go and participate in the process.
Mr. Paul James, we'd like to appreciate your time for joining us today on this issue. Program Manager, IAGA Africa, many thanks.
Thank you, Melissa, and all the best.
To you as well. Well, still to come, it's still in furtherance of the technical evaluation of BVAS on the mock exercise. A senior fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development, Professor Jideofor, will be joining us when we return after the break. Welcome back. We're staying with the mock accreditation exercise. It was gathered that 55% of observers reported that they were very satisfied with the conduct of the mock exercise. 40% observers reported that they were satisfied with the conduct as well, while 4% of observers reported that they were not satisfied with the conduct of the mock accreditation. Well, to weigh in further is Jideofor Adibe, Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Nassau State University, KEF. He's also a senior fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development. He joins me from our Abuja studios. Thank you and welcome to the program. First, what were your observations? I mean, are you confident that the Commission can bridge all gaps as it plans for a bigger deployment?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the whole idea of mock is very commendable because prior to this time, we're all assured things will be all right and then we'll get hiccup here and there. But having this mock accreditation very close to the real exercise, it's for them to see if all the things that they've been, all their plans and on paper, they will reflect also in practice. So I think it's something commendable. And that the fact that there were a few observations that should be fixed should not be something to worry us. For me, that gives them an opportunity, to tidy up, loose ends before the actual exercise begins. And the good thing is that the report is that in most of the instances, the beavers, they worked. Of course, there were other issues people were concerned about. One is that they have to bear in mind that the mock exercise was only with 1% of registered voters, roughly that. And that there were other issues that people should, for example, the issue of currency scarcity, fuel scarcity, they all played a role in the low turnout. And the fact that probably people think, well, does it really matter? It's merely a mock. So there are other elements that they should have to still make contingency plans. There are also elements that they may not be able to control, like security and other things. But overall, I think the whole idea of a mock showed seriousness and, a kind of determination to get it right.
Professor, when you look at the voting population, would you say that they are properly informed about, the exercise forthcoming? And this is because, in terms of INEC's drive so far, the, days, weeks to the election, of course, the PVC drive, which, was also ongoing. Do you think that citizens are interested and we would see a larger turnout this time around with the efforts that INEC has put in so far?
Well, it's very difficult to know because of other intervening variables, essentially the problem with accessing currency and fuel scarcity. So it makes it difficult to know whether the campaign, the information, trickle down properly. Because even if people were properly informed, virtually everyone was complaining about access to money, fuel scarcity. So even if you have money, going to do mock accreditation probably will not be a priority, when compared to exigencies of survival, like feeding your family. So it's difficult to know. But whatever it may be, they now know that they need to make more efforts between now and the 25th. People have to know where they will vote. We saw some gaps there. People, the late turnout of people who do of INEC officials, that has been a recurring decimal in all the elections, and they really need to look into it. And then, of course, they have to factor in this issue of security and then hope that between now and the 25th, when the proper election starts, we will not be grappling with the issue of fuel scarcity and the issue of access to currency, which limits the extent to which people can move.
And if you were to advise the government, you would say that, that problem or that which poses a challenge is scarcity, and then, the redesigned naira notes and access to it is a problem right now, and that rests with the government, not INEC.
Yes, there are extraneous factors in the whole election that INEC has no control over. For example, the police, the providing security. INEC does not have a security infrastructure of its own. It has to depend on others. In terms of the currency, this thing, I actually think is a good policy. And I think actually the government should not be blackmailed into extending it again. I personally feel there's a kind of collusion between the banks, especially the bank managers and politicians who are all hell-bent in making sure that the policy does not work. You will recall that even before then, let me say, I'm among those who were opposed to Emefiele expressing interest in running for office while being the CBN governor. But I would like to put this in his own jacket and say that when efforts were being made to kind of suggest he was financing terrorism, some people saw the hands of politicians in that because of the policy. Earlier, there have been efforts to remove Professor Mahmoud on account of beavers. So we know that some of the politicians are not sleeping. They don't want it. And we have to ask ourselves, why don't they want it? And to the extent that they don't want it, then generality of the citizens will feel okay. We have to find a way of ameliorating the suffering of the people. The president had asked for an extra 1 week or so to fix the problem. Let the problem be fixed, but let there be no extension, because if one of the the legacies the president wants to leave behind is that of election, free and fair election, and these beavers, and this is a test. Remember, if you finish strong, people will remember your regime very well. So he needs to finish strong, and do not allow unscrupulous, self-serving politicians to blackmail the government into changing the policy.
Professor Jideofor Adibe, Professor of Political Science and International Relations, Nasarawa State University, many thanks for your thoughts on this issue.
Thank you very much.
This is Channels Television's breaking news.
We have news just coming in, and that is the Supreme Court has affirmed Ahmed Lawan, that is as the authentic candidate of Yobe North Senatorial District. The Supreme Court has affirmed Ahmed Lawan as the authentic candidate of Yobe North Senatorial District. In the lead judgment delivered by Justice Sentos Mweze, he faulted the approach of Mr. Bashir Machina in commencing the suit at the Federal High Court's Damaturu Division by way of originating summons and without oral evidence to prove allegations of fraud. The APC had challenged challenging the nomination of Mr. Machina as the party's candidate, insisted that the President of Senate, Ahmed Lawan, was the authentic senatorial candidate for Yobe North. The APC had approached the Court of Appeal in Abuja seeking to nullify the judgment of the lower court that declared Mr. Machina as a candidate, but the President of the court, Justice Monica Dongban-Mensam, led the panel and held that the appeal was an abuse of court process. So this is just coming in that the Supreme Court has affirmed Senator Ahmed Lawan, Senate President, as the authentic candidate of the Yobe North Senatorial District. Breaking news there by the lead judge, Justice Sentus Nweze. Let's go to other political stories we're monitoring across the states, beginning with the National Publicity Secretary, Victor Moses, who's disclosed in a statement that is signed and issued by him. According to him, most of those arrested, this is an alleged arrest of members in Rivers State by the Atiku support group. The Commissioner for Information in Rivers State, however, told Channels Television that it is illogical for the Atiku campaign organization to link Governor Nyesom Wike to whatever issues it may have with the police. Elsewhere, Senator Aliyu Abdullahi, who is Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate, believes that the chances of the All Progressives Congress presidential candidate Bola Tinubu in the February 25th election were not in any way threatened by the PDP candidate and his Labour Party counterpart. Speaking to journalists in Abuja, Mr. Abdullahi reiterated that Mr. Atiku and Mr. Obi were not giving the APC candidate any challenge but a show. Also, the resident electoral commissioner in Delta State, Dr. Cyril Moregbe, says INEC has not recruited any ad hoc staff ahead of the forthcoming election. He spoke while refuting allegation by the Young Progressives Party, YPP, that INEC in the state received a list from the People's Democratic Party containing names of beneficiaries of Governor Udom Emmanuel's Entrepreneurship 3,000 project for employment as ad hoc staff. And elsewhere, Nigerians are still feeling the crunch of the scarcity of the naira, thereby making POS attendants take advantage of the situation. According to a survey, the point-of-sale transaction charges jumped 400% in most cities across the country last week. And the volunteers, coalition volunteers, non-governmental organizations and support. The support groups of the PDP Council in Ebonyi State, they've called on the Inspector General of Police, the Director General of the Department of State Security Service and other security agencies to take note of the current wave of insecurity in the state and restore order and peace. They equally called on the Ebonyi State government and its militia forces under the watchful eyes of Governor David Umahi to stop intimidating opposition elements before it is too late. And we go back to our breaking story of this hour. The Supreme Court has affirmed Senator Ahmed Lawan as the authentic candidate of Yobe North Senatorial District. In the lead judgment, Justice Sentus Nweze faulted the approach of Mr. Bashir Machina in commencing the suit at the Federal High Court's Damaturu Division. He says it was by way of originating summons and without oral evidence to prove the allegations of fraud. Stay with Channels Television as we monitor your stories. This is ahead of the elections. So do, of course, follow our updates here on Channels Television, your home for the news, and our various handles, of course, to get your thoughts on all of the issues. Thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Nwonka. Goodbye.